virtual meeting on Zoom. Tonight we'll have on the agenda an update from Cheryl on some financial issues that have happened in the last 24, 48 hours. We'll review the capital request. We'll have public input, if any, and members update, if any. Then we'll do the minutes from 1/26, and then we will adjourn. So I see Tom is joining us now. Good. Cheryl, you're on.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
So just TV on or something in the background? Oh, now it's quiet. Never mind. Go ahead.
Just to give a brief update, to update the Finance Committee, I know you all have the materials, but we did have DOR come in and do a financial management review. They presented that last night to the Select Board. This is not an audit. It's really a kind of recommendation on best practices. They started this last spring, but then COVID happened. And so we're just at the point where we're getting the results of that. Just a high-level summary, some of their recommendations is having the town administrator more involved in the budgeting process, adopting policies around fraud, creating some workflow procedures, designating the tax collector as a collector and combining treasurer-collector function, as well as giving the assistant town accountant or someone else on the finance staff some higher level accounting duties so the finance director can focus on high level strategic finance. So that's just an overall summary of that presentation. Were there any questions that anyone had that I could answer at this point?
One thing that jumped out to me, a lot of the recommendations that he was making seemed to me that we're in the midst of doing some of those things now. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is very much.
Did he put them up there just to reinforce that, or?
No, so I mean, like I said, they started working on this last spring, and so you know, they had formulated some of these recommendations quite some time ago. It was just coincidence that that was a direction, to a certain extent, that was a direction that we were already moving in. So it's nice that it was reinforcement that we're moving in the right direction, but they were completely independent of each other.
Good. Any other comments? Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So the other item that I want to mention that was also circulated to Finance Committee, but was brought to the Select Board last night, and they did vote to approve that, was Chief Pernard's memo and request. He has a large amount of overtime that he won't be expending due to COVID-19 this year. They can't do trainings, they can't do a lot of the various activities that they typically would do, and any overtime they're incurring is being covered by CARES because it's COVID related. Understanding that we're going to have quite the crunch coming up with capital, and that for the last 2 years we've only he's only gotten one cruiser and is a little bit behind on his cruiser replacement. He did request to utilize some of his operating budget extra funds to purchase this cruiser, knowing that this is a one-time, very special circumstance, but seemed to make sense given the current environment that we're in.
This would give him an opportunity to get back on the track of replacing cruisers every 2 years.
Correct.
Or two cruisers, yeah.
2 cruisers per year, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Assuming we have capital to do it. We don't do everything we want to do inside the levy.
Yeah,
right.
Time over time after time again and again and again.
I appreciate the chief getting creative like that for sure. And I think it's absolutely necessary this year, but this really is not addressing our ongoing vehicle replacement plan at all. Every year we're putting these things up for debate, ambulances, police vehicles, and I think we have to come up with a different strategy on financing it. It's nice to have the rotation. They created these great rotations, but since I've been on, we haven't been able to live by it. So what are we doing if we're not, if we're not giving some precedence to the vehicles, then let's create a new replacement plan. Maybe it's too aggressive if that's the case. If it's not the case, then we need to put more precedence, I think, on these vehicles over other capital projects. Otherwise, I don't see this going away. Every year, we're going to have the same debate, So, and whether that's Cheryl, whether that's a different fund that we have access to, where we address this incrementally, we put money into it every year, like we do other stabilizations, or we come up with a completely different plan. I just know that in another 1 or 2 years, we're going to get hit with a big ambulance bill, or,
I think it's on next year's capital.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
I know leasing's crept in as an option there, but that's also more utilized in communities that their budgets just can't afford ambulances. So I just hate to even have to go that route on a continuous basis. That's all. I don't know. I think getting some good ideas on how to keep up with this rotation plan, especially for safety vehicles and emergency vehicles, is going to be critical. As the budget's we're not going to all of a sudden have a windfall. I don't think it's only going to stay at least stable or go slightly down over the next couple of years.
Well, the other side of it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anthony.
No, I'm just going to add, Gary, that the select board too were talking about a capital plan and better planning. And it's something that Cheryl and I talked to, and I really want to really work towards having a 10-year capital plan next year and really addressing everything, not waiting for it to just fall upon us, whether it be the Shaker Lane School or replacement of a fire truck. I want everybody to really look at their capital plan and look at their schedule and really project out so we know what's coming. There's certainly public safety vehicles are changing too. I think that what you probably see in our fleet for ambulance is the old box type of back. Well, if you look now, a lot of the ambulances are using the Sprinters type of vehicle. Those are significantly cheaper. A box ambulance could be $250,000, $300,000, where the Sprinter could be $125,000. A lot of the ambulance companies are using them. So I think that we have to too look at how we're spending our money, and if there's other alternatives that doesn't hinder the service that we provide, that we can provide the same service, maybe in a more efficient way. There's pros and cons to everything, but I think we have to look at everything.
Cheryl, with the ambulances, it's just built in that we buy ambulance with the funds that are generated by the ambulance service, right?
The current ambulance they're purchasing, yes.
Yeah, right. And now we're starting to talk about a stabilization fund to purchase vehicles for the DPW?
Correct. There is, on the capital plan, there is,
right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we are starting to think about those things that Gary brought up. More formal presentations on that. Yeah, we've got to do that, but it's not something that we aren't giving some thought to.
And I know that Gary and I talked last year when he about potentially creating a vehicle stabilization fund. At the time, I don't know that there was support more broadly. I don't know if that's a conversation we want to bring up again. And Anthony, I might defer to you a little bit on that as well too. But that was an idea that we had kind of started to float around, just so that we were kind of really segregating that money and setting that money aside so that it was clear that this was our plan for saving from those vehicles.
Good.
I'm not sure I understand why the vehicles have to get that much priority and specialization, though. I mean, it's the overall capital plan that we need. There are a lot of things in there that have to be addressed. And we can't look at that as, I mean, what happened was we had a plan. We were using the capital. We were using the free cash. It was working fine. But then we wanted to do all these things inside the levy. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep bringing it up. But I can remember at the library discussion, and in the same discussion of, oh, we can afford it, the next problem was, oh, that ambulance that needs to get pushed out of here because we don't have enough capital for it. And so we have to understand. I mean, it's either a piggy bank that you can go after and we can rate it to do other things, or this is really the capital plan, and we have to have it not just for vehicles, but for maintenance on all these buildings, all these assets that now we're building, all this physical plant that we have. Those all have to be priorities.
Yeah, I think if we're going to go through the exercise, which I think is you know, a valid use of time and warranted, you know, I think understanding the impact on, you know, the operational budgets for maintenance, whether it's vehicles, buildings, etc. Right? I mean, that'll help us in prioritizing building out that plan too, right? Just what, you know, what's the cost of inaction on all these things, and that'll drive towards the priority.
Yeah, I think a 10-year plan is going to help clear a little bit of this up. When we're talking about capital replacements like roofs and things like that, outside of catastrophic type capital issues. But I just know that the vehicle one, I bring that up because it's kind of, we've had a plan. It's just we haven't been able to follow it because, oh, all of a sudden this year, one of the departments, something else pops up on capital that wasn't there the year before. We weren't expecting it. So we just don't know, you know, what's going to get in the way of a vehicle replacement. And vehicles will always be kicked to the wayside because you can drive a vehicle another year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 or 5. I can go down Route 2 out in the western part of the state, and I brought it up before. You can probably still see some old, you know, big 1980s the Dukes of Hazzard police cars running around out there. So it's just, you know, what does the town want and what's safe for our community? But anyway, I just think the vehicles are the one thing that we kind of can keep putting off, and that not just police, DPW, fire. It seems like since I've been on Fincom, they're the ones that seem to end up getting kicked. That's all, you know, because we have to replace a roof, or we have to do this, we have to do that. And so if it's either a plan or it isn't a plan, that's all to me. It's just frustrating, I think, when it comes to the vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it's going back. I mean, I agree, Gary. Right? I just think it's like if, you know, if we see like, okay, the police car we pushed out by 3 years and that led to, you know, an increase in operational costs, then it probably was a bad idea to push it. You know, if it's not leading to any additional maintenance or marginal, then maybe the plan's too aggressive. So I think that data can just help tune it in a little bit, right?
Any other comment? Okay, Cheryl.
All right, I'm just going to share my screen here really quick and kind of run through some adjustments here. So we're just going to run through quickly some adjustments that were made to the operating budget based off new information we had, as well as discussed last night, some new capital items as well too. So we did receive the governor's state budget. On the state aid side of things, it was pretty much what we were projecting, but we actually ended up with about $200,000 in savings on the assessment side. When we initially built the budget, we really weren't sure if we were going to get high assessments this year, you know, knowing what was going on with MBTA and whatnot. So we're fairly conservative there. And so as a result, we have about $200,000 more available in budget dollars, which I'm recommending that we use that for capital needs, which would bring our total available capital to $1.8 million. So we have operating budget adjustments of about $45,000, which I'll go into detail in a minute, which reduces the surplus to just over $4,000. And we actually have additions to the capital plan. This is slightly out of date. It's really $1,250,000. 200 is the highway project that Chris Stoddard talked about. 1 million was the senior center design project, which was discussed last night. And then 50,000 is for additional money for space needs, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And my recommendation for the senior center design project is actually to consider borrowing for that versus paying cash.
Why is that? Do you want to talk about that now, or are you going to get to that later?
I can talk about that now. I mean, typically when we're talking about design fees like this, like we borrow. We don't usually pay cash capital for that for these large projects. Sorry. And so, I mean, aside from the fact that it eats in significantly to the capital budget, it's a pretty large item that is related to a much larger project that we would typically roll into borrowing.
Is that what we did with the library?
Yes.
Yeah, we rolled it in.
Yes.
But it wasn't done properly, so we actually had to vote to divide it out. Is that something?
I think the article the article that they put forth was like, they made it just for design, and it was too much, and it should have been a broader article, and it should have said design and, you know, whatever, construction or something like that.
Because the actual design costs were half.
Okay,
sorry, Betsy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but we have $3 million aside already for this. It's available to do that if we wanted to. Do you think it's still better to borrow than to use what we have?
Right now, until we do the permanent borrowing, and then use the $3 million to reduce the permanent borrowing.
Okay, so again, it's just in order to be able to fold it into the bigger loan is what you're thinking of.
Right, yeah.
And until we fold it into the bigger loan, Sean, we'd be in that, right?
Oh yeah, it would just be a temporary ban. So I mean,
so in a ban right now, the interest rates at the last ban that I did in Wenham, I think it was less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about the borrowing, it's really small money to borrow.
It's just, so all you're paying, Betsy, really is just a small amount in interest cost for that ban, and then we do the permanent borrowing. We use the $3 million. And that's how that would work. So it's small dollars to ban something like that.
Yeah, and just to jump in real quick too, to build off Anthony and Charles' point, the last borrowing we did, I think, was that for the ban was about 30 to 40 basis points. So it's really low cost for getting any of these projects going. So that gives us some flexibility there.
Now, does that have something to do with our rating as a town?
Yes.
Is that why?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, basically, it's a variable rate, too. So you have a AAA bond rating, so you end up with a really great rate.
Gift that keeps on giving.
All right.
We want to make sure we do things the right way to keep that bond rating too.
Got that right.
Right.
Any other questions before I move on to this slide?
Nope.
Just real quickly. We're talking design, project. This would go to vote in May for the entire project. Is that, or are we just talking design would go to May if we're talking about what's the plan? I guess I'm trying to on the senior center. If we're talking, we're going to be going to May with design vote, correct, for the town.
So there'd be two warrant articles that have to do with the senior center, Gary. The first one would be a capital article to get us through the feasibility. Feasibility is normally the design is normally 10% of the project, and that's why we're figuring $1 million. And the feasibility is normally 10% of that. Okay. So, I think that what we're looking at is we have an $80,000 in other capital projects that we can retire. So what we'd be looking at going to town meeting is to repurpose that $80,000 to add it to our existing space needs budget to get us through the feasibility schematic design. Then we're also asking to not lose any time for $1 million for the borrowing for the design through construction documents. So this way, we're not waiting for another town meeting. We can continue to make progress.
Okay.
Well,
are we
you'll
talking?
have to make the case for doing this project at the same time.
Yeah. Are we talking about the senior center at all tonight? Is it
Only as a part of the capital recommendations. But if you've got something to say, Gary, have at it.
No, I know. I think when I chimed in before the meeting started, I thought I heard we were talking about inside and outside the levy. That question had come up, and I don't think we want to labor it tonight on what our recommendation is on that. I think I know it was discussed last night a little bit on where, if that goes inside and where that pushes our percent to, which still seems pretty low overall. But I guess we'll save it for another discussion. You know, we've got enough to talk about with capital right in front of us.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Cheryl, go ahead.
Okay, so these are just a few operating budget adjustments that we have since we last presented the budget to you. We did receive the sewer enterprise budget. I had originally had an estimate in there. So just to explain that a little bit, we were carrying their debt in our debt service line. And so it's really just taking out of our debt service line and putting it in our waste management line. Is that change? Our property and liability insurance, I received the rates for that, and they're going up 10%. Plus we have the new library building as well that will be, that's affecting that line item. And then our public buildings, the water budget, we've looked at our usage and cost over this past year. And based off that, we realized that we need to adjust that up 10,000. So total increases to the budget were $45,375.
The water is like double what we budgeted originally. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, evidently our water rates have gone up.
Double? In the town?
Yes. And they're also now assessing, which I don't know if any of you receive a water bill, but it's basically a debt fee. So now that they have the borrowings for PFAS and some of their other borrowings, they're now assessing a fee for the debt. So,
yeah, it's been going up appreciably because of that.
So is everybody in town expecting their water bill to double like this over the next year?
Mine didn't double, but it certainly went up.
Okay.
So just, as you look at the capital plan, just some, overall recommendations, obviously looking at the top priorities for each department, I would recommend, looking at the articles that have some other funding source, like we mentioned, the project that Chris Stoddard had brought up, Beaverbrook Road, and then the chart of accounts redesign. As we talked about before, considering borrowing for the senior center design, funding the articles that are for major maintenance, and any articles that might, incur some deferred maintenance costs if not funded.
I'm sorry, go back, Cheryl. Go back
sure.
to where you talked about having other funding sources. So the Beaverbrook you're talking about because the state said they pay all this if we pay this amount?
Correct.
So what is the counter to that for the chart of accounts? Who's paying for part of that one? I don't remember.
So we have we already received the money actually last year. We have a $20,000 from the community compact grant.
Okay. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
What's the Beaverbrook Road project?
I don't know too much about it. I know it's a roundabout.
Yeah, they're putting a roundabout on 119. One of those more, I don't know if you've gone through Carlisle or, not a typical Route 2 roundabout, but, the ones that kind of speed up access all around. Yes. Very efficient.
Yeah, the state came to us, Tom, and said, if you get through the 20% design, we'll do the project, and you take those roads that run parallel, switch ownership from the state to the town. So, right. which is no big deal, but this is something that it's it's obviously needed there, and to have the state kick in all that dough, it's crazy not to take them up on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the next few slides are really just the Excel sheet that hopefully everyone received that I sent out, just showing the capital requests. As you can see here, now one of the new items is $50,000 for additional space needs money to assess what will be the vacant library space. Again, these are all the same capital articles you've seen before. And then on this slide, there's the highway capital article that we were just discussing, as well as the senior center design. And then again, these are the same capital articles that you've seen before.
So for the space needs assessment for the current library space, I mean, we've had money for space needs assessments to now. They knew the library was going. This is the first time we've talked about this.
Does seem bizarre.
Well, I don't know if Anthony, you want to answer that, but I mean, the only thing I will say is that, you know, we've been using quite a bit of space needs money as we explore different options for the senior center. You know, I know that Anthony and Joe have been meeting with them quite a bit. And so, you know, last night they met. So those dollars go quickly. And so not to say that maybe it wasn't a thought before, but I think maybe there was some pivoting on the senior center that we didn't initially anticipate that we needed them to look at for potential locations. And so that ate into the original design, some of the other space needs money. But I'll let Anthony expand.
Yeah, so Betsy, my understanding was back in a year from March, a year ago, just before COVID started, LLB made that presentation. And they talked a lot about the campus and relocating some buildings off to the right of the left, if you stand in front of the new library. And they looked at the DCU building. And at that point, COVID hit and really it just got stalled. So when we picked it back up, clearly the direction that the select board really wanted to address was the senior center first. And at that point, they were looking at Indian Hill and whether or not that could have been an option for a senior center. And that didn't exactly pan out the way that I think that many would have liked, but that would have been inexpensive and there's lots of issues there. So right now, really the focus was to stick with the senior center. And then once we got through and we were headed in that direction towards town meeting, then we were going to look at focusing on, okay, so what could we do with the old library? And really, there's so many restrictions too. There's that how much we can invest into the building before we have to bring the entire building up to AAB, which is like ADA on the state level, AAB. That's 30% of the assessed value. You know, that adds up quickly when you're doing renovations. And then there's another trigger to complete the entire building up to life safety code. So that would be an enormous amount of money. So I think that what we really would be looking at some sort of like Band-Aid approaches to that space right now till we really figure out what the long-term solution is for town hall.
Turn it back into a gym for Park and Rec, huh?
They certainly need it. You know, they certainly need it. So they're still in our thoughts too. We have some ideas down the road with for them, but one thing at a time.
All right. All right, Cheryl, let's start on the capital plan. And Sean, you're going to keep a running tally on where the money is going and what.
Yeah, definitely. If you want, I can pull up and do a screen share and just run through the list, or
Sure,
keep it on the side, whatever works best for you.
We add a column to say what's going to go in, and then add to it as we go down the list, so we know what's in. Or do you have another way of tracking what we're saying yes to? Are you doing that based on ones or what?
So these are all from the PowerPoint presentation that Cheryl just ran through.
Right.
But anything, I'll just put in what you decide, and then mark it there.
okay with everybody?
Yeah, I just Betsy, were you saying what happens if we just went with all the ones right now? Where would we be?
I'm just trying to feel, yeah, something like that. Well, I think we should go down one by one, because I think last time we just kind of short shrifted that. I was just thinking there'd be a column or something where I could see what we're saying is in and what we're saying is probably not in, based on our first pass, and assuming this is going to be iterative a little bit.
Yeah, can you see what Sean has up, Betsy?
No, I guess I'm sorry. I guess I don't. Forgive me.
No, that's okay.
I brought this thing up on my own because that was being cut off. Okay, sorry. I got it.
Okay, everybody on board?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Good. You're going to take us down the list, Cheryl?
Sure, I can. So the first one is the chart of accounts redesign for $55,000.
I think that's something we need to do. In fact, we'll go down one by one, but my feeling is that initially I'm interested in giving everybody at least their first priority. So I'm okay with that one.
Well, and don't we already have 20,000?
Yes.
So would that just be a $35,000?
The project's $75,000.
Ah, got it.
Like the way you think.
We're still thinking on my.
Good try, Tom.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So
this one makes sense.
Did anyone have a comment to make on the chart of accounts?
I think it's a priority.
Yep.
Anybody opposed?
No, I think it makes sense, especially with the presentation last night. I think it's something we need to do.
Okay. That's a go.
Then we get to the bottom, and then we'll see. We'll see what the total is at the end, and then if all of a sudden it's not a priority anymore, right?
Right.
Sean, can we put in 55,000 instead, so we can quickly add those up as we go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. What was that? Betsy?
Yes. Put in the 55,000.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yep.
What was the total amount of requests for?
3.8 or something like that.
Was it that much? Goodness.
That much?
We have 1.8 currently.
It's 3.9.
3.9.
I mean, there's a lot of school ones in there, so I mean, I think
if we take all the first priorities except the cemetery, it's only 321,000.
All right, so the next one is the space needs that we're just discussing for 50,000 for the current library space.
I'm good with that.
Is it a priority? I mean, if we don't do it this year, what does it hurt?
You just have an empty building.
Right.
They're out in September. So really the goal would be is once we get the senior center moving is to start looking at that.
say yes for this pass. I'd say yes for that.
Yeah, particularly if all the priorities are totaling 300,000, then yeah, let's add it. We can always back it out if we get into.
All right. Next up is the expansion phase 1 for cemetery for 90,000.
Yeah, I mean, this is their only request, so he's gonna make it a priority 1. I know this is his second or third year of asking for money for this because space. I mean, we do have space, but I know that, you know, in talking to TC, it is eventually here we're going to be forced to do this. So he's just trying to get ahead of it sooner than later and start this project going so that we can move. So where it sounds like we have the money for priority 1s right now, it's hard to say no to any priority 1, but I do recognize that the cemetery, it is their only priority. So of course it's a 1. It might actually be a 2, 3, or 4. I don't know. But.
Well, I agree with you, Gary. I think it's something we need to do, and I think we can do it this year.
Yeah,
we're going to have less money to work with next year.
Great.
So I'm good with that. Any objections?
No objection. I think it seems like I think for what they're asking for, you can give them a partial, they could still get started on it. It seems like, but like you said, it may be easier just to do it now anyway.
Well, if you give them a partial, you end up doing a project in 2 phases, and that always costs more money.
Okay.
If no objections, that's a yes.
All right, the next one is the fire truck with a plow, which he had indicated is used to plow in front of the ambulance during the wintertime. He had this as 1 over the deputy's vehicle, but if I recall, and maybe I heard him wrong, I thought when he presented, he had said, if you were going to pick 1, he would prefer you pick the deputy's vehicle, but I might have heard that wrong.
I think he said something like that, but I don't remember exactly what it was.
I thought he said the utility truck was like getting rotted out, that it had some serious issues.
Let's say yes to this, I think, unless there's an objection. And then that is his top. He only has 1 number 2. And if we can come back to that and find money for it, then it won't be an issue, right?
Right.
They'll be getting them both. So
yeah.
Okay. Barring any objections.
I like his real accurate number. That's the only one I've seen. Can we call it 6240?
And there was a 75 cents, but it rounded.
Did it?
I'll leave it.
The next is the major equipment repair article. It's for those large, if a transmission goes or some kind of large repair to any of their big trucks.
We do that every year, usually in the operating budget, so I have no problem.
I was going to ask. So this is something, do all the departments have this type of equipment repair in our capital?
Yeah, they do. So this we had. So highway has it, fire, park and rec. The fire one we had actually put into their operating budget last year, but actually when Anthony and I were talking with the chief, and he was explaining what they really use it for, because it's for things that you just don't know might break, that can be very expensive. And so it made sense actually for us to keep it in capital and not have it in operating budget. Tires and oil changes, they pay for that out of their operating budget. This is for like really large expenses.
I'd like to see monitor this closely over a couple of years just to see how much of it actually gets spent, especially if we're modernizing our fleet, so to speak. You know, this probably fluctuate drastically, but I mean that's kind of when we have to say yes to anyway. So
yeah, if we get the replacement schedule right, Gary, you'd almost expect this to be almost never used, right, or barely ever, right?
right.
Right.
We'll have something like this at a town level for all the different fleets, right?
Yeah, I know it.
I mean, like a finance fund, you know?
Well, that's the thing. I always thought, you know, the Fincom stabilization could be used for emergency, you know, engine explosion type things. That's what it is used for, right? So, but I get it. I see what they're doing here. This makes it a little bit more streamlined. It's definitely a massive predictor number. I don't know how they can actually, you know, I'd love to know where the 25,000 came from, you know, especially where tires and maintenance is already paid for in the operational. It's just, you know, counting on one vehicle completely needing a transmission or whatever it is. I don't know, but
that 25,000 has been a standard number that I've seen through the years.
Right. That's why I was just wondering, does it get used?
Yeah, right. I agree. But yes,
you got to do it. Yep.
Moving right along.
Okay. The next one is his number 2 priority, which we talked about for the deputy chief vehicle replacement.
Let's stick with the number 1 right now.
Okay. The next one is same, you know, highway, same thing, major equipment repair for their vehicles.
That's good.
All right. The next one is the replacement of their 1993 dump/plow truck for $175,000.
Those are 2s and 3s. I think he wants to stick to 1s.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Back and relook.
No, except for the fire department, though, they got their equipment, their maintenance one plus their number 1.
Right. Yeah. Sorry.
So we did the same for the highway. They get both of those.
Oh, but they're both
2 up.
Yeah, it's a priority 1 though for them. That's what they're saying.
You know, but the fire department is just more aggressive than the highway department.
I see what you're saying. You know, we're looking at a fire vehicle in 2008, 2010 when yeah, you're right.
Well, we get back to that, but we're probably going to approve that 175 anyway. So
it's a 90.
Yeah, I can't believe we have a truck that's a 1993 vehicle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Older than
it's all over.
It's a Mac though.
Yeah. Oh, it's an antique.
Okay, moving on.
It looks like the first priority for the schools from PMBC is for a long-term facility planning study for Shaker Lane.
Yep.
I believe they are in the MSBA process for Shaker Lane. Anthony, is that correct?
Yeah, they are. They had a meeting about that. So, yes.
That's amazing to me. It's just amazing.
No, I need to get in on this planning study.
Oh, man.
Stuff, I'll tell you.
Plus, it just does seem like Shaker Lane. It wasn't that long ago, it seems like, right?
That's next on the...
Back when I was in school. 20 years was new.
They've got it as their number 1, so...
Any other comment? Good. Study Shaker Lane.
All right, moving right down the list to police. They're a Ford Cruiser to replace car 35, which is a fully marked Ford Explorer for $65,000.
Okay. Any discussion on that issue? Nope. Move on. Good.
All right. Next one is PRCE's major equipment and repairs for $40,000.
That's the annual. Yeah.
Discussion? Good.
Okay. Then we have the two new articles, the highway for 200,000.
Wait a minute, where are we? Oh, here.
Yeah. That we just discussed for that roundabout.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's too much money from the state to say no to that one, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and there's no, it doesn't make sense to borrow on this. Is that?
All right, good there. The next one is the design services for the senior center. I don't know if you want to put this on here if you're supportive of us.
We'll
We're talking about banding this.
Yeah, should that be another column? Because it really wouldn't tie into the number for the capital.
We certainly don't want to approve $1 million of our $1.8 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different discussion. I don't think we have a problem with it, but we won't deal with that as part of our 1.8 million in capital.
Right. So the next two, I know it's priority 1 and 2 for the school, but they're the phone system replacement, which we need them to replace those phones because we're upgrading our phone system, and I don't know if you recall, but they're on our phone system. So that is, even though these are priority 1 and priority 2 on the town side, we need them to do the phone system replacement.
I thought the school's #1 priority was a Shaker Lane plan.
That's the PMBC.
That was their PMBC school request.
Say that.
I know, they got a little crafty.
They're like the fire department. See, they know how to work this stuff.
Hey, wait a minute.
Gamesmanship.
I couldn't believe that was their #1 thing of all the things that they would have to do. Now I understand.
Yeah, well, they want to be able to talk. Well, maybe they don't want to be able to talk to us. I don't know. But yes, I think 1 and 2, because it's our own best interest.
Right.
Nobody objects. We'll approve 1 and 2, or recommend approval of 1 and 2.
All right. We can keep going.
Right.
I think you're missing some stuff, Sean.
No,
Cheryl, what?
Yeah, it should be.
We have
PRC, school, transfer station,
the transfer station.
town clerk.
That she requested that to be in 2023.
Okay.
Let's see.
No, I think he's got it all for this.
Is the transfer station on there? Oh, I just saw it a second ago.
Yeah.
I don't know where it went.
That's it. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah.
Had me scared for a moment.
Wait, why?
Sorry.
Clerk's in there. I'm sorry. Is that in there too?
The town clerk request is a 2023 request.
Oh.
Is transfer stations a P4 though?
That's yeah. He had that as a 4 priority.
So he didn't have any. Okay. 1, 2, 3s.
I mean, he's thinking way out on there. You think about that request. He wants basically 10,000 a year for 20 years. You see what he's doing there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about. Planning ahead for vehicles. That's a great, way to do it. But
Okay, it's confusing it because it's transfer station, but it's really highway, right?
Yeah, he lumped it. He kind of grouped it with his highway priorities.
But was that for this year?
Yes, it was for this year.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Any objections to that?
Well, it's number 4 on his priority list.
Well, he has no 1, 2, and 3. So I don't know why. I don't know why the 4 is there.
Well, because it's part of the highway department. It's not just a transfer station. It's part of the highway department.
Oh, I see. Short money, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I do too. I like the thinking.
Yep.
But okay, but then we're going to need to talk about how we're actually going to do this stuff, right? If we start it for them, then we're going to do it for the other ones, and so on. I don't disagree with you. I just, yeah.
All right, Sean, what's our total here?
Hey. All right, we're done here. We saved the town a lot of money.
Okay.
Right. We got about 1.2 left, 1.1.
You don't have to spend it all.
That's right. We don't have to spend it all.
We don't have to spend it all, and we can put more in. Like we said, this is the highway department asking for 10,000 for vehicles, but we could just say we want to put 50,000 for vehicles across all departments, not necessarily specifying which one. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go about that, right?
All right, let's go look at some priority 2s, I guess. Kind of do it by priority.
Yeah, do you want to go back up to the top, Sean? And so the first, was the deputy chief's car.
I mean, this is where it's helpful to look at the 5 years, right? Because if next year he's going to be asking for an ambulance, there's not going to be any money for this.
Right.
I can be convinced, but I replacing the deputy chief's vehicle and the chief's vehicle and all those sorts of things. I think working vehicles come first.
So let's just come back to this one. Let's see what we have for other vehicle. We have that.
A 1993 truck.
Yeah, so let's.
I mean, I don't know how the thing is still running.
They'll probably give it to the cemetery and they'll use it for 4 years.
Diesel Max were great trucks. That's what all the fire department trucks that when I was in Brookline, anything that was a Mac always just lasted. And Chris does do a great job at cleaning those, which is, part of the course there that usually it's the rust and corrosion that gets to them. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it's an old truck.
I'm okay with this one.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
Any objection?
Nope.
Yes.
Okay, good.
All right, the next number 2 priority is the high school roof replacement for $800,000.
No. I don't have the money this year to spend that kind of big dollars. That's my opinion.
Just a matter of what it costs us if we don't replace the roof. I guess that's the question, right?
Well,
could we ban that?
I mean, we could, but I really wouldn't recommend it based off kind of where the senior center discussion is going and the borrowing we're probably going to have to do with that.
I mean, the thing about this request for sure, it's a roof. It's not going to go away next year, right? So I think when I heard the briefing in our joint meeting, this is the one he talked about right now. They're just kind of each year they perform maintenance on it, plug in the holes, so to speak. We use the term whack-a-mole, right? I know when I looked at the math on a lot of these and we removed that, you could almost meet the requirement of almost all other requests by not approving that one, but it is a priority too, and that
from PMBC.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's come back. Can we come back to it and see what our other priority too?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next one is the statistically valid survey for Park and Rec.
So, I mean, it's kind of a crazy year. We're giving $100,000, I think, or so out to surveys and studies. Yeah. You hope that they become fruitful at the end of the year.
My concern on this one is that people are just with a COVID head and they're not going to get the response that they really need to get them to plan for the next 5 years or something. And I know how important, how much Alicia wants this, but that's my concern. But that's just my personal view on it. I don't know where everybody else is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling with a little bit too. I mean, I know she's trying to do the right thing, really gear things right to the town. I guess one thing with like the space needs survey and the 50 grand for that. I mean, do these things tie together at all? Right? Would outputs from the statistically valid survey, go into some of the space planning thoughts and needs, based on what Park and Rec, defines out of that. I guess that, I just, cart before the horse. I don't want to plan needs for a building and then have a Park and Rec survey come out that, we're offering them one thing or planning for one thing without the right data. It's only kind of.
That's interesting. It's an interesting view.
I made it up as I was going. It's popped in my head tonight.
Tyler, I'm not sure that the two are related from my understanding with the survey. I think that she's looking at the survey would define what type of programs. So some of those programs, may need space, but some of those is really just helps them prioritize what they should be focusing on. Camp T, or is it the Trek and Adventure program? And I think that's what she was looking for. I could be wrong.
I think that's exactly. That's what she said to me. That's what she's looking for.
Yeah, I think what was dinging in my head is just I think somebody made a comment about a basketball court in the library or whatever, right? So if we were really going to make a space finding around something for Park and Rec, that came out of that I guess is what was ringing in my head. But
I didn't get her presentation on this. I don't recall it, but to me, these type of things seem really cyclical. I mean, with the needs of a community literally can change in a very short period. You could almost do one of these every 3 or 4 years, right? Based on population and what new demands and new facilities that we have. But I have to assume it seems necessary. If, Anthony, you talked to her about this?
Yeah, she, and her justification was she had some number of new families that have moved into Littleton, and really identifying what their needs are is it was what her goal was.
And I know from meeting with her, me and Betsy sitting with her. I mean, her plan was to get this in the capital plan and then execute it kind of later in the year. After hopefully the fallout from COVID had shaken out. So I don't think it was something she was planning on kicking off in May. She just wanted to have the ability to do it.
Yeah.
And she asked for it last year, and it did get pushed off then because of COVID.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable.
She's also, the ERC committee is behind this also. So they've given it a lot of thought along with her and her deputy. So. I don't have any great problem with it. My concerns are generally the same comments that have been made across the board. But if we have nobody feels really heartburn about it, then let's approve it.
So just one quick thought that you might want to consider is, they do have. They just got their retained earnings certified for over $200,000, which they could use their own retained earnings to fund this survey as well. So that's also an option too, is you could ask that they utilize their own essentially free cash to fund the survey.
Well, I think given the funding that the town did for them last year when everything fell apart, that makes a lot of sense. I'm interested, how come the retained earnings came, do they expect them to be that high?
No.
Well, it wasn't it high because their costs were so low?
Yeah, well, it's just like the police department. Overtime, so many things they would usually do in a year they couldn't do this year.
Right.
So they would have additional funding. So
yeah.
Well, and so the other thing I'll say too is that when we went to town meeting, with the dollar number, it was a projection for how they were going to end the year, and there's still so much up in the air, and they really were projecting that they were going to get refunds for everything, and they didn't know whether they could actually open up camp this summer or not at that time, and so the $445,000 that was transferred to them was projecting basically the worst for them this summer, and it ended up not being quite as bad, and so that's effectively why they have the retained earnings.
Well, that's an idea. Cheryl, aren't we meeting jointly with the Board of Select Board to go over this together with them, what, on 22nd?
Yes.
Okay. Things like this, won't you get back to the PRC and tell them that we'd like them to look at their retained earnings to pay for this? If they have a problem with that, show up at that joint meeting and make their case. Is that all right with everyone?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we put retained earnings in column G there, Sean, like we did for the band for the other thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it, right? For all the number twos.
Yep.
Except for the 800 grand.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Right.
So our new total is 870.
I think we need to do the roof. I hate to spend that much money, but that just seems like you don't fix a roof, you just pay for it over and over again, right? I don't know where everybody else is, but that's just 800,000 just for that one part of it. It's amazing, huh?
Yeah, roofs cost.
Yeah, I mean it's been a recurring problem there kind of forever, hasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
and then looking at capital things coming with HVAC and things down the road. I mean, we can't do any of that stuff until we probably have something stable to put it on top of. So it probably is, especially with next year not looking any better as far as where we're looking at the capital plan. I agree. I think this is probably the year to put it in there.
Yeah, if they've got it as a priority too. I mean, I would love to just sit here and say, hey, let's do all the other PMBC school projects this year. It doesn't equal the 800,000, and we could knock all those out. It just seems crazy, but we've got to do it. So, I mean,
any other comments?
Just thinking about when they were in the old high school, the middle school. It was the roof was always leaking.
Consistent, huh?
Well, with the new high school is 20 years old now, so we call it the new high school, but that's the way it is.
All right. Years old, Betsy, 20 years old. That must mean we have to replace it soon, right?
Yeah. Well, we have to replace the entire roof now. It's a replacement schedule. We're going to start putting away 100,000 every year for the next 20 years.
I can't believe that, Alan. It was brand new when I moved to town. That's crazy.
All right.
Well, let's take a vote on that.
We're going to plug it in.
Okay, to fund the high school admin wing cafe roof replacement for $800,000. Gary?
Yes.
Tyler?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Betsy?
Yes.
Alan? Yes.
Painful.
Painful is right.
What do we have left for money?
$25,000.
There you go.
We're not.
Okay, what do we have to spend? 1.8?
Well,
Yes.
you
Yep.
don't have to spend it.
You don't have to.
Oh,
No.
but we still gotta, let's look at our next priority
Look at the
line.
list and see what else is on there. Yeah.
33s, I guess, right?
To 120. Yeah.
If there's anything that's, well, we still have the deputy chief vehicle that he's,
Mm.
you know,
We also, we have a lot of school projects besides that 800,000 too. So.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's look at some of the school ones and see what's on there.
Schools.
I mean, I know that maintenance van was one. I mean, that thing is, ancient.
Is that the one at the high school?
Yeah, exactly, Tom.
That Bill drives?
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably time.
Yeah, I think we ought to fund that.
I mean, if we're just talking about age of fleet, that'd be the next oldest vehicle across the board, right?
Right.
I'm good with that one.
Does it make sense to do that phone system? I'm just seeing another phone, so they all have the same phone system done the whole year.
Yeah,
I'm just throwing it out there. I just noticed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the middle school one, Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think maybe the Shaker Lane paging, if they're looking at a school building, doesn't make sense, but I kind of agree getting that all done at once. It's probably going to be cheaper.
Yeah, I don't know if it's all related, Tyler, if it's something that makes sense to standardize. I don't know.
Right, I can tell you, we install them for our business, right? We'll charge a customer a whole lot more if we come back and do it time after time, right? So it's probably more cost effective to do it at once.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if we're going to do one or two locations, let's do them all.
Okay, I got that down as one of my that I would have voted for. Any heartburn on that from anyone?
Well, do we say yes to the van before we jump to that one?
We didn't. We didn't say anything about it. We just jumped to that one.
Yeah, I'm okay with the van.
I'm okay with both of those. Yeah.
Betsy?
I'm good with the van. And the paging system, I guess I would just like to hear from somebody that in fact they're going to save money by doing them all together. And it is a priority 4.
You want Steve to come to the meeting on the 22nd? Maybe that's a question for him.
Yeah, just to ask. I mean, does it really matter? Are there efficiencies we're doing? I'm not disagreeing. I know Tyler knows what he's talking about. I'm not disagreeing with that. It's just based on what they're doing here and so on. They may have gotten some different information based on how they're set up or whatever. So I'd just like to hear it from somebody.
Yeah, that's a good point, Becky. Especially since they have other other higher priorities on their PMBC list, right? So you're right. We shouldn't be arbitrary in that.
Is the paging system a separate thing than the phone system?
Yes. Yeah.
So they're not tied to each other?
No.
Well, if you look at that line, it says middle school phone paging system replacement. And then it talks about replacing the phone system to standardize it across the district. So the paging thing in there is sort of throws a monkey wrench into it because you're not sure whether we're replacing the phone system so it matches the others, or we're just replacing an internal system. So
Right.
yeah, let them come and explain that.
Yeah.
We're good with the van.
And it's also interesting. Yeah, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also interesting that the Shaker Lane paging system is also on the list, but it's lower down, even though it says it's obsolete and yada yada yada. So it would just be interesting to know all those things together. What, why are one priority more than another, and where are we really?
Right. So we're good with the school maintenance van, Sean.
Oh, let's go back. Good.
Okay.
We have. Would that leave us?
Everybody keeps coming back to the deputy chief's vehicle.
What do we have left for money here? If we.
What was that game show where at the end of the show the contestant would have this whole room full of things to buy and they had so much money to spend?
I don't remember, but you're right. Let's look at school at 43,000 at priority 4, and then Shaker Lane paging system is 6. But that's a paging system. Is it different from the other? I don't know.
Yeah, we got to stay away from those right now. I just.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And if Shaker Lane's getting redone, that may not be the time to do it anyway, right? I don't know how tied that is a physical plant versus just.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got 94,000 left.
So we got those in the deputy's truck too, right? We're gonna put that in the yellow also.
What?
You've got you have the highway F1 350 as well, right? And then
yeah.
Right, but if we're gonna do it by priority, right? Like, do we do all the other P2s? Is this the only P2 we didn't find?
Yeah, just the fire the deputy's vehicle. Then is where we're at. Back to. And then you might not want to touch any money after that until we talk to the schools to see if we can save that. 40.
If we do the 50 of the 44, we're left with 23 cents, right?
Yeah.
But if you've got a 2008, that's getting old for a vehicle too. It's not.
Right. It's just, yeah.
Well, if we do the deputy chief's vehicle, then let's stop right there because that'll give us about 40,000 left to maneuver when we talk with the selectmen, or some other capital need is going to pop up between now and then anyway.
Yeah, it still gives us a flexibility for Park and Rec if we have to, or the school, or the middle school phone stuff, or that other truck for highway. So it gives us some options.
Yeah, that's true. That the Park and Rec, if they convince us to do it, we have to put that money back in there. So.
Yeah, I like that, Alan. I think it makes sense.
So let's just leave it where it is.
Except for the fire truck, we're not.
I defer.
Yeah, I mean,
the priority 2 vehicle. That's all. I mean, we're down into schools priority 4s debating.
Yeah.
We're still.
Okay.
PMBC. There's still a lot of PMBC stuff there, too. It was right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gym floor is there. We don't have the money for the HVAC unit.
No, we don't.
And we're not talking about alumni field lights. They had some other kind of way they were going to deal with that anyway. So
Right.
I think that the gym floor, wasn't that, maybe it was one of the other ones. One of those, I think even somebody from the schools even said, we'd like to do that, but it's not that important.
Yeah, there was, I can't remember who was on the call, but
Yeah, was that
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, barring,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was going to say, for me, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for the sake of consistency, I think I would like to recommend the other P2 for fire, right? And then I'm sure we'll go through and discuss it with the select board. But I think we funded all the other P2s. I think it makes sense, especially since we've gone farther down the road with the schools.
And we can get into the weeds on what priority 3 to fund with the leftover.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody have any big objection to that? If not, we will recommend the deputy chief's vehicle replacement.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
All right.
If we didn't have that high school roof, we could have really made a big dent in this year.
Yeah. Okay, we'll approve that one, Sean. And that leaves us and change.
Good.
Everybody happy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. You could send that out to all of us when this thing is over with, Sean.
Will do. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Any other issue with capital before we move on? If not, do we have any public input? No public. All right. Members input. Betsy, do you have anything?
No.
Gary?
No.
Tyler?
No.
Tom?
All set?
Did you go to the game?
No.
Ah, rats.
But I am going to be in the parade.
In Tampa?
That's funny.
I figured I've been in the last two.
Why not? All right, thank you. Minutes. Do we have the minutes for the last meeting, the 26th? Is Marilyn there?
Yeah, I just promoted her.
Ah, Marilyn deserves a promotion.
All right, Marilyn, you've been promoted.
Where are you, Marilyn?
I don't know where she is.
So, Alan, while we wait, I did think of something. If I could go back and change my mind on bringing something forward.
No, it's too late. You got to ask.
Too late.
You said no. So no, go ahead.
I did say no. So one thing that came up on our trust fund commissioner meeting, and I'm not sure if Sean, you had a chance to mention this to Cheryl yet, but one thing we noticed was that the cemetery trust fund for perpetual care hadn't been funded, right? So that's something we talked about as a trust fund commission in the past, and with their capital request and note on that being funded from the trust, it's something we definitely, I guess as the trust fund commission wanted to, make sure the talent into and just make sure we're figuring out where that, if there's been a change there, where that's going.
Yeah, I think, Sean and I talked about that a little bit, and actually before Steve left, he kind of clued me in that the revenue wasn't really necessarily going to the right fund. So that was definitely something that Sean and I were looking into. And
okay, yeah, it popped in my head, just based on our recent meeting, and then with the, if they're looking at funding for the capital article, or additional funding coming from the trust funds, it's, we have to make sure that the inflows are there too, so we can support it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and I don't know why it was set up this way, but I think it was set up so that initially all the money went into the revolving fund, and then periodically there would be transfers over to the perpetual care. So that is something that we're looking to fix and figure out as well. I don't know.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. I don't know what happened to Marilyn. She's like disappeared.
Well, then we'll leave that to the next meeting. Our next meeting was scheduled for the 23rd, but I think we're going to meet jointly with the select board to go over the capital request to give them our input on the 22nd. So that will be our next meeting. I don't know what time they're going to start, probably earlier than we usually do, but we'll see that when they come out with their agenda.
It's 6:30 start. And remember, Alan, we have a public hearing too that night for LCTV.
Yep. Yeah, LCTV is at 7 o'clock, I think.
That's 7, yes.
Yeah. All right. Anything else from anybody before we take a motion to adjourn? Thank you all for your input. Sean, Cheryl, Anthony, it's always good to see you. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn. I have a second. All in favor, Betsy?
Aye.
Tyler?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Alan? Yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.